This is an unlikely situation. I realize that it strains the credulity of the normal mind, and it is not certainly anything that I could have ever imagined. For a long time, I simply could not comprehend it. I would say to myself, Robert, you've obviously mistaken something inexplicable for something explicable, and soon this temporary derangement will cease and you will be your own man again. And then I would wake up in the morning thinking things would be back to normal, and then they wouldn't be. So recently, I've begun to see the value in trying to look at it for what it is. And what it is, I've got this ivy, and it is growing out of my asshole. Don't ask me why. Perhaps I swallowed a seed or something. I don't know why. Don't ask me. I've never even heard of it before, and I certainly never pictured it as a possible fate. You can laugh. I'm not above seeing the humor in it. What I don't appreciate, however, is when people are unkind, having been made the gift of several pairs of monogrammed garden shears, being called a fertilizer eater, you can well imagine. The worst thing, though, are the gossips. Those with an insatiable curiosity about my dilemma, no sense of tact or discretion whatsoever, asking me the most personal questions, and I don't mind speaking about it. I just want to be able to speak about it clearly, in a way that doesn't breed hysteria. You would be amazed. People asking me, is it kudzu? And then stepping back as if they could catch it or something. It isn't a disease. It's just something that happened. The worst thing, though, is people cannot see that there might be something good about it. They're so quick to see the inconvenience, the grotesquerie, and I'm the first one to admit it. I mean, it is ivy and it is growing out of my asshole. That is grotesque. Without going into a detailed cataloging about the way that it's made difficult the simplest things about my toilette. There is a complication factor involved. There is mess involved. I'm finding myself far more actively involved in my own shit than I ever thought I would be. But it could be worse. It could be someone else's shit. I've had to do some tinkering with my self-image. The shame, the fear, you can well imagine. I mean, if this is ivy and it is growing out of my asshole, God knows what is going on inside of my bowels. But I got over that. I didn't die, not yet, and I'm functioning, well, I wouldn't say normally, but relatively well. I did go through a period of the Job syndrome, thinking, what kind of test am I undergoing, and what did I do to deserve this? The most difficult thing about that was trying so hard to figure it out all the time. I would spend every day racking my brain thinking, if only I could do this, or if I could go back and undo that, or if I spent every single day trying to have these or those thoughts, maybe the situation would disappear. Well, it really led nowhere. I mean, ultimately, regardless of what I did or could have done differently or how I could have prevented it, the fact was, it was there. So once I got to that point, it was actually quite a relief. I became more interested in the physical manifestations of the thing. You know, how fast did it grow? How thick was it? You know the kind of thing I mean. And then something happened that gave me a far more provocative understanding of my situation. It had just grown to the length where it was peeking out of the corner, the bottom of my trouser leg. And one day I was standing around somewhere leaning against something, and when I went to walk away, I found that it had twined around that thing. Well, that didn't surprise me, really. I mean, that's what ivies do. They twine, so I just yanked it free, kinda, and went on. But then it started happening more and more, and anytime I would be anywhere for any length of time, it would twine around something. And it started hanging on more tenaciously, and I'd really have to give it a yank. And it kind of hurt. But that didn't surprise me either. I mean, it's a fucking pain in the ass. Of course it's going to hurt. But then one time, it twined around something, and when I went to yank it free before I could, I realized that it felt kind of good. That there were these feelings of warmth and pleasurable feelings that, well, it's difficult to talk about it. Suffice it to say that there were feelings coming out of that thing and traveling through the ivy directly into me. I mean, that is literally baldly what it was like. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit it now, but that frightened me. So I yanked it off really hard. I spent the next few days restless and agitated, walking around trying not to give it any twining opportunities. But then I let my guard down, and it happened again. And that time it didn't just feel good, it really felt great. But I yanked it off again. I don't really know why. I think it made me uncomfortable, the thought of being connected, attached to something, and not being able to walk away. See, but then it happened again. And that time it didn't just feel great, it really felt quite right, being twined up to that thing. And so I stayed there for a very long time. It was very inconvenient, you can well imagine. But it seemed to be worth it. And then the other day, I woke up in a panic. And I didn't know what had happened in the world or with any of my friends, so wrapped up had I been in this entwinement. But when I went to yank it free and walk away, I found that it wouldn't let go. Well, I really yanked it pretty goddamned hard, but I couldn't get free. Think about it. So I cut it off with a pair of those gift shears. It was horrible. I never want to have to go through that again. So now I know what my options are. I can either just never give it any twining opportunities, or I can walk around all the time and just keep yanking it off. Or I can wait for the situation that I think that I could be attached to. But what if I'm wrong? Or I could just cut it off right at the source, you know, go through the pain, survive it, and get back to my life. But what if it just grows back? So I really don't know what to do. I mean, there is this ivy, and it is growing out of my asshole.